Hi everyone, I go by the name Omega Jacob, and we have one question. The question states, what were the problem faced black people during the Back to African movement? So that question, or this question, is very simple. First of all, as a student, you need to identify a key term. A key term there is Back to African movement. This was a movement which organized by Marcus Garvey on 20th century, which aimed to send all black people out of America, because it seems by the time it was hard for the black people to attain equal rights there in America. So for that reason, Marcus Garvey started the movement, the so-called Back to African movement. So there are many reasons which led to the problem of Back to African movement. The first reason is the imprisonment of Marcus Garvey on 1923. Marcus Garvey was sentenced for 5 years, and again 1925 Marcus Garvey was deported to their homeland, Jamaica. So this had many consequences, because he was the founder, he was the radical leader, he was the one who guided the people about the movement. So the act of sending him to jail lead to the problem. It hindered the progress on the movement of Back to African movement. Again, it was the problem of disunity among Africans there in diaspora. Some of the black people in America wanted to go back to Africa, and the other did not want. They want to stay back. This is because they do not know about where they came from, in which country, in what part of Africa in which they came from. So that created disunity among themselves. As the results, it led to somehow to the failure of the movement. Again, we have another problem is stated like different ideology. Here we see Marcus Garvey and we see William E. Du Bois. For Marcus, he wanted all African to go back home, because it seems very hard to attain their rights there in America. But for William E. Du Bois, wanted all Africans to fight for their right there in America, because some of them were born there in America. So it was their right to fight against segregation, to fight against discrimination. Again, another problem which faced the movement was the illiteracy or ignorance. Most of the Africans were not aware about their right, were not aware about the challenge and the exploitation they faced there in America. As the result, it was hard for them to agree to be sent back to their homeland in Africa. So this also was one among of the problem which lead to hinder the Back to African movement. Okay, another reason which led to the problem of Back to African movement was corruption. They established the association, the so-called UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, in which they aimed to raise fund so as they can hire the Black Starship line. So But among their organization, some leaders lead to the bankruptcy of the association. So this is because of corruption. So corruption also was a factor which hinder the progress of back to African movement. Another reason, apart from imprisonment of Marcus Garvey, division among themselves, different ideology. We see also corruption, and another point is lack of fund. They had no enough fund that managed them to move back to Africa, because they need money to buy food, they need money to buy medicine, they need money to pay officials. So all this complicated the movement of the back to African movement. As the results, it was tough to make it possible for all African to come back in homeland. Another problem was the strong hand of American. They wanted slaves to work in plantation, to work in mines. So it was not possible to agree that all black to be back home. So they hire a certain group, the so-called Ku Klux Klan, in which they hunt black. They assassinated many leaders of Africa. So also they experienced the many violence there in America. So all this was one among of the role of the American hand, so as to control or to continue to exploiting black people there in America. So for these few points I mentioned and the brief explanation I gave, I think it is enough to guide you to widen up your understanding about the about the problem which faced black people in America. Thank you for watching.